This incident is tough for me to talk about. I'm a 27-year-old male and was living in New Hampshire at the time in an extremely safe town. I lived alone with my dog Toby during this time and worked 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sharing a duplex was new to me and quite different, especially when your neighbors were very odd. It was a lady in her 60s and a younger man in his 30s. I believed they were mother and son, but because they wouldn't speak to me, I had no clue. I tried making small talk, but neither of them said a word. The mother looked beat down with gray hair and she wore the same blue nightgown every time I saw her. I would see the son smoking outside, wearing the same white wife beater since I moved in 7 months prior. It was a summer night in July around 11 p.m. and I let Toby out in the backyard. Now, mind you, I share a backyard with these creeps. Toby was running around and I heard the neighbor's slide door open. I saw the younger man and his wife beater walk out onto his deck and gave me a death glare. My heart dropped and began feeling extreme anxiety. I saw him reach in his pocket and he pulled out a gun. He pointed it at Toby and fired 4 times. I screamed louder than I ever have in my life. The man ran inside and closed his door. I began sprinting towards Toby, but he fled into the woods. I immediately called 911 and told them what happened. The police arrived in 5 minutes and surrounded our duplex. They placed me in the police car and asked me to recount what happened. My dog Toby never barked and was the most behaved puppy, so he had no excuse to shoot him. The cops were outside for about 15 minutes, and then they heard 3 gunshots. They rushed inside and found the mother and son deceased, both by bullet wounds. Come to find later, the son had shot his mother twice and committed suicide with a single shot to the head. Later that night, Toby came back and was shot in his back leg. After a couple surgeries, he came back brand new. This was the most horrific thing I've ever witnessed. I am blessed.
In 2010, I was living in Quincy, MA with my husband and new baby and roommate. It was a Saturday, so I was taking a much needed break from the baby and went to run errands and have some alone time. My first stop was a local RadioShack to go and get a phone accessory. After my purchase, I walked out of the RadioShack deep in thoughts about my to-do list and then thinking about what I'd have to do for the baby. Just as I'm in the middle of thinking this, I hear a voice. "Excuse me, miss, can you please help me?" I blinked in confusion and looked over at the man who addressed me. My first impression was Italian grandpa. Everything about him was beige, from his khaki slacks, brown cardigan and tweed flat cap to his sandy coloured moustache. Even the car he stood next to, a boat-sized town car, with some faded champagne colour. I hesitated, being a big believer in the golden rule. I generally try and help out people whenever I can, but this time, something about this situation made me pause. I stood there in the middle of the parking lot. "What do you need?" I asked. He smiled warmly. "There's something wrong with my car." He held up a key fob. Look, every time that I click the door, it won't lock. It's very strange, can you come and look?" He then gestured to his car and clicked the fob in demonstration. Still hesitating, I answered, "I don't know anything about cars, but we're right here at RadioShack. Maybe they can help you." No, he said. "I think we can figure this out together. Come and look." Again, I repeated that I didn't think I could help him. I could see that he was getting agitated, but he continued to smile. He walked over to the back of his car and opened the trunk. "But here's the strangest thing," he said. "The doors won't lock, but the trunk will." He waved at me eagerly. "Come here and have a look at the trunk." I began to feel very confused. Part of me wanted to go over to help, yet another instinct prevailed. I began to walk in the opposite direction of my car, repeating over and over again to the man, "I can't help you. Go to the RadioShack for help." As I walked away, I saw him throw his arms up in disgust at me, slam down the trunk and get into his car to drive away. I drove on to my next errand. Feeling very unsettled, I tried to process the encounter and I began to have my doubts about my reactions. Maybe he was just an old man who needed help. Did I do the right thing? When I returned home, I shared my encounter with my husband and roommate. I thought that they'd laugh and assure me that I was being paranoid. Instead, he looked me in the eyes and said, "That guy tried to kidnap you." I never reported this incident to the police as I didn't have any useful information regarding a license plate number, and I didn't think a man asking for help with his car would count as harassment. I did always wonder what his true intentions were though, so on a lark, I decided to Google attempted kidnappings in Quincy in the hope that my search would turn up empty. But truly, what I found was terrifying. Quincy man accused of attempting to kidnap a woman 20. I immediately recognised the predator as the man from the RadioShack parking lot. A follow-up article revealed that he actually lived in my old neighbourhood. I was talking to my mum the other day, and she reminded me of this story. It's quite short and might not rattle anybody else, but it rattled me to the core, even just remembering it. So here it goes. I live in the historical district of Suffolk, VA. Not the best place, but hey, what can you do? We lived in an old Victorian style home. I was about 15 at the time. It was a 3-story home, so maybe 3,000 square foot. You couldn't necessarily hear anything from the other side of the house most of the times. As you walked into the house, you see the L-shaped stairs to your right, and there is an archway right ahead of you looking into the den. Now the archway looks left as you come into the living room. From the top of the stairs, you can see straight down to the door and then the living room. Now, the scene is set. I'll go on with my story. Me and my 3 best friends, Kay, Anne and Ellie, were playing in the games room at the top of the stairs with my mum. It was about 10 PM and we spent the day at my house, and Kay, who was 17, was going to drive us all back to her house and watch some films while my mum was at her boyfriend's. I had, rest in peace her sweet soul, a German shepherd named Angel, who was about 15 at the time. She barely ever barked and was just kind of a large lapdog. My mum was taking pictures of all of us on the couch when we heard her bark. Very loud, then growl. We immediately knew something was wrong, and my mum told us to be quiet and turn off the lights in the room that we're in and told us not to move off the couch. She didn't want us to alert anybody that might have been downstairs, even if there was anything though. We immediately shut up and my mum started going down the hallway. We then heard her scream, "Get the hell out of my house now." My mum is not a scared type and she can scream her head off if she really needs to. So I go to the hall and see my mum gripping a steak knife that she keeps in her dresser right by the top of the stairs. I hear her slam the front door, then thumps on my porch, and my mum runs down the stairs and turns on the security alarm. It wasn't on because we just come from hanging outside, or maybe they turned it off. My mum runs up the stairs and tells us what she saw, and it shook us all to the core. She saw a very tall man with a bandana on, all in black with a rope on one arm, a large knife, creeping and staring through the stairs. Apparently he was trying to make his way up. She said that she managed to startle him and he ran out quickly. She then asked if we would stay with her the night, and my dad was on deployment and my little brother and sister were already asleep. Kay immediately called her mum and said what was going on, and she said that she had no problem with Kay staying with us. I still have no idea what the hell that person was trying to do. I'm just thankful that they didn't make it all the way up the stairs before anything could have happened to us. And God bless my dog. Before I begin, I'm gonna say that I'm a 19-year-old male and working a full-time job. I've since moved out of this place that the incident occurred in. What happened took place when I was 6 years old. I lived in a decent neighbourhood. We did have the occasional creepy person that would walk or bike by. We also had some places where the drug use was frequent, but that didn't bother anyone. They were nice people to talk to and frequently mentioned that they're into that stuff. It never bothered me. Enough with the background. The house that I used to live in at that point was very decent sized. My dad built a garage, a huge garage. Now this is where what happened. The garage was huge. It had enough space for 3 vehicles. Now this all took place in December. I lived in Atlantic Canada, and in Atlantic Canada we get some of the worst snowstorms and blizzards that there are. Now on this one day, I was being a little kid in the snow and my dad was working in the garage on one of his project cars. He had gotten thirsty and went into the house to get a drink. He came back out and suddenly asked if I'd went into the garage. I asked him why, and he said because there's footprints in the snow leading to the garage that he didn't think were his. I said no, and we both thought nothing of it. Then, that evening, my dad and I went to bed early. My mum works late and come home late that night and said that she saw some of my toys and they weren't where they should have been stored away. They're actually on the garage floor. She didn't think anything of it, moved them and parked in the garage, closing the garage door. She then went into the house. She watched some TV and went to bed. Now my dad wakes up at 4 AM every day to be at work by 5. Now on this particular night when my dad woke up to go to work, he realises that the garage door was open. He was angry naturally. He wakes up everybody and goes out to the garage. He comes back in and is freaking out, and there's a lot of expensive equipment which is missing. Some lights actually flickered on, and we're able to see those same mysterious footprints leading into the garage earlier, leading into the backyard and into the forest behind my house. The cops searched the garage and my mum brought up the toys falling from the rafters. The cop asked to borrow a ladder and went to check up. They then found a gun, a meat cleaver, and some other weird stuff that I can't say here. Now I did not sleep for a week. I was terrified. They called that guy 2 weeks later, and apparently he's trying to sell all of my dad's equipment at a pawn shop. He confessed to everything. This guy had literally broken into our house and monitored us for ages. He started to watch our house for an entire month just to learn our routine so he wouldn't get caught. He had weapons in case anybody found him. He got 15 years in prison.
So my boyfriend and 2 other friends and I went on our annual trip to New York City in January a few years ago, and everything was great and we had a great time. On our way back from the city, we were travelling home to West Virginia. We were driving through Pennsylvania. We started hearing weird noises from the engine in my friend's car. Then we just coasted to a stop right outside Allentown, PA. We were all exhausted from late nights and early mornings in the city, and this was the last thing we wanted to deal with. Regardless, we called the AA and sat in the car joking and laughing about how this is just our luck. It was probably around 9:30 PM. About 20 minutes later, a huge truck pulls up behind us. A guy gets out and then comes to the window asking what we think was wrong. We asked if he was from the AA and he grunted, yeah. He was a scruffy older guy, but he was really tall and seemed to be in shape. We told him what happened and he said he might have something in his truck that could help and that he'll be right back. So he goes back to his truck and we all start talking about how it's weird that he didn't start towing us somewhere. We figured we would have to go to a hotel and everything, and didn't expect the car to be fixable within a few minutes of the AA arriving. The guy came back and he didn't have what he needed in his truck. He then suggested one of us, we were all 4 college-age guys, come in his truck with him and go back to the garage and get what he needed and come back. We all awkwardly looked at each other and kind of rambled on about how we didn't want to leave anyone behind because we only had one charged phone between us and we needed to talk to our parents and blah blah, starting to get a little nervous. Then my phone starts ringing and I don't recognise the number, but I pick up thinking it might be the other guy's parents. The guy on the line says, "Hey, this is so and so from the AA and I can't find you guys." My heart stopped. There's a guy from the AA with us right now. Nope, my garage is the only one in that area that works with the AA, so I don't know who you're talking to. Where are you guys? I see the real AA guy's lights driving on the other side of the interstate and tell him this. He said he would be over in just a minute and not to get out of the car. So the guys overheard me talking to the guy and obviously we're all freaking out, not knowing what to do or what to say to the guy who keeps trying to help us. He comes back up to the car. "If you want to get this car fixed, one of you is going to have to come with me, and I only have room for one, but I can't carry all the equipment by myself." We all kind of sit there scared shitless because this guy essentially lied to us and wants to take one of us with him in his huge truck to his garage. While this guy is trying to convince us, I see another set of bright lights pull up on the side of the road with us. It's actually a tow truck, so I know it's the guy that I just spoke to. Immediately, the scruffy truck driver bolts back to his truck and starts driving away immediately. The rest of the trip is uneventful. We had to crash at our friend's grandma's abandoned house that was like 100 miles away, and it was during one of those huge snowstorms we had back in 2009 or 2010. But I'm sure this guy wanted one of us to go with him, and that person would never see the light of day again. It's really creepy thinking about it again.